All right. So yeah, so we're gonna do something a little bit different than like I think what we normally have been doing. So I'm just gonna basically be doing more of a web scraping, kind of like straight from just like, all right, I get this website, let's check it out, and let's try to pull interesting information from it. So I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing my screen right now, and I'm just gonna share my whole desktop. This way, when I compare everything, the only thing is now your guys' faces are going. Why does it do that? Nope, that's not it. I almost want to say like, just wave your hand so I can find you guys, but here you are. All right. So, okay. So we're going to talk about specifically, well, I picked the website. I didn't see anyone else make a suggestion, so I'll go ahead and take it. So who's ever seen Adventure Time? Just out of curiosity. You don't need to like, all right, I see Hazel raise her hand. Okay, rest of people. Hazel, I don't know how you feel about it. I love the show is so interesting and fun. It's definitely a kids show, but it's got so much depth to it. And I mean, it's kind of spoiler alert for the next like 10 seconds, like or 15 seconds. So if you want to put it on mute, put it like I'll put my thumbs up when it's good. But basically, the show is like very like kind of like fantastical, really interesting, but it turns out to occur like 1,000 years in the future, where basically nuclear like holocaust like destroyed the whole world, and there's mutated
After I retire.
things like this. It's a really interesting show. So just know it's like this really nice kind of kid like friendliness, and then also this like dark weirdness to it too. So anyway, it's a good show. I'd recommend it. Be good to hear if it's needed. But anyway, I thought it was a really interesting one because they do a lot of made up words. They use a lot of interesting, what I think is interesting linguistics and stuff. I think it'd be a really interesting data set to kind of check out and like look over. And so I kind of was thinking about this maybe like a week or two weeks ago, and I didn't see any data that was like directly pulled for it. So it turns out a lot of like shows will have captions and stuff, and you can pull the information from the captions. This I couldn't find a direct one that had a consistent like caption use and I could pull and everything. So I actually found this fan wiki about Adventure Time, and they actually have just regular people just put in the different transcript just by hand essentially. And it's always amazing to me like how much people like can really enjoy like a show or something like this and really dig deep into it. So you can see here for each like episode, and not all the episodes are completely there, so there's a little dirty data too, so it's kind of fun. But you can see here is like the different characters talking. Oh yeah, that's like there's a lady rainicorn, which is like a unicorn that only speaks in Korean. So it's interesting to see like this kind of how people do the transcript and stuff like that. So you can see here this is the actual Korean, and then someone actually put like the translation of this. So there's some interesting parts. You can see here, for example, the description of the transcript. You can see kind of like a description of the scene. There's some interesting things that people had put together, like for example, locations and stuff within the episode. So that might be an interesting thing if you wanted to look at that kind of data set. And again, what's kind of interesting about this is that it's also user generated. So it's someone who had to put in a bunch of effort into doing this. So some of the transcripts, for example, and I know there's a few down here at the end, like are not complete. So like if I try to go to this one, you can see there's no transcript and that no one basically contributed to this. So this kind of makes it a little bit challenging in the sense of scraping, because you might come to this website expecting hopefully that there'll be some information on this, but there's nothing. So this is kind of a good place to look at how web scraping would work and how you would approach that. Okay, so so the way I kind of am going to approach this is first was like, okay, I see this transcript, and I looked at like the very first like episode, for example, and usually the first episode is probably a good place to start where someone's done something, and we can see here that it's kind of represented by like the person with some colons, right? And we can see different what they're saying. They also have like in these brackets over here, it seems like they're pretty consistent in being like that's a description of the scene versus actually things that people are saying. So, and you can see that it's sometimes mixed in as part of their like things that they said. It's kind of more like a play, right? And you can see in between here is actually there's descriptions of between, maybe transition to a scene or something that happens in the scene, and they describe it between here. So this will be kind of interesting to pull over and just to kind of look around. It's like, oh, let's see if there's like another, like, let's say another episode. We'll go to like something like season 5, right? So this episode called "The Wizards Only Fools," right? And And so we can see it's kind of similar kind of structure, and we can see good, like there's still that kind of basic structure. So I'm hoping that, you know, this community was relatively consistent, but it's possible that there's changes in how they do things, or, you know, depending who put things in there. And you'll notice too is that sometimes when they're talking, they actually put in links to other parts of the wiki. So this is going to be interesting when we actually try to scrape this. So I can do like a little quick inspect element. Okay. And when I do an inspect element, you can see kind of like, let's see here, right? No, this is what I want. So this one. This. All right. So we saw in there that's Wizard City, and it actually has a tag in there. So this is something we have to look out for when we're scraping it. It's like, oh, if we're looking for just the word Wizard City, maybe some of them are tagged, maybe some aren't. If I was just looking for the word city, it's possible that this might actually get messed up in the sense that it counted like maybe 3 times, like city, city, city. So these are things that I might want to consider going forward and like think, all right, how do I want to get this data into something that's usable for me? Okay. So any questions you guys have? And I'll send this over through Zoom right now since you guys are all here.
Sorry, I might have missed that. What exactly do you want to scrape at the end? What's the end goal? Is it the whole script, or is it some specific parts of the script?
Yeah, and this is where I kind of decide, like, you know, what am I interested in? And this is kind of like the fun part of web scraping. It's like you decide what to do. And sometimes you might say, hey, you know, I'm really interested in, let's say I just wanted to scrape just the locations for each episode. That might be a different kind of thing. It's like, well, then later on, maybe I want to actually look at what I was interested in is what each person is saying, and what kind of like what kind of terms are they using a lot, you know, the way each character speaks. You'll see kind of like there's some interesting like made up words like decorpusinator, you know, that kind of get thrown in there. And sometimes, for example, one thing they keep saying is like, oh my glob, or algebraic, which is like, you know, like I'm just saying like, oh, cool. Like, and they'll repeat this throughout, you know, the whole like series and everything like that. So for me, I'm like interested in finding the transcript and saying, okay, what character, what did they say? And pulling that information together. And maybe there's a change over time as well. Maybe as the seasons go, or the episodes go further and further, maybe it's something I want to kind of pull into it. So again, this is kind of like stuff I'm kind of thinking about just out loud and what my interests are. Depending on what you care about, you might say, well, you know, like I don't really care about the show, but I think the locations might be interesting, you know, for whatever use case. Again, this is more for a fun one, but you could potentially use the same idea to pull out information from like, you know, Yelp or like a review or like an article and stuff like this. Or, you know, it could be something like another transcript or something like that, where maybe you want to see how the show, maybe the show's ratings change depending on like what kind of things they were saying and stuff like this. Maybe you can see that change too. These are kind of like things that you can kind of play around with and try to find patterns. But we're really just trying to get some data. And in this case, for me, I want to get the transcript information. Does that make sense? Cool. All right. So I'm going to kind of approach this in a way here. And I made a little, let's see here, what is the groups? Adventure Time transcripts. So I just made a little script right here. And I'm actually going to make a new one. So I was playing around with this. And we'll kind of start from scratch versus like me kind of going through it. So what I kind of do first is, again, the big part of all of this is saying, well, what is my goal? like Nicole had said, like, what data are we trying to get? Like that does matter, right? Depending what kind of data is, depends what we want to scrape. So for me, I'm like, okay, I want to get, you know, like I want to get what they say, right? Maybe I can get some information about like the scene, but I really care about like what they say. That's what I care about, right? So this is stuff like, okay, let me think about this. So if we're looking at a single transcript, and this is where it's good for going into a web scraping part, you might say, okay, let me look at one specific page I would scrape. Now, there turns out to be like 280 something, I think, episodes on this one, you know, from this one show. So I don't want to try to just start attacking it with trying to scrape every single, you know, web page for each episode. I wanted to start with one just to test it out. Okay. So I'm like, okay, like I'm thinking here, like what I would kind of grab and stuff like this. But a good place to start is just do imports, since it's kind of like a nice familiar place to go. So I'm just going to do some imports here. Oops. I realize this is not code either. So these are just some basic imports that I normally would have and everything like this. I have a little text expander that like just makes it easy, so I don't have to type it out every single time. But we have our pandas. I might do some plotting later, right? So some interesting stuff. And since we're doing web scraping, what do I have on here? I do it scrape. Yeah, okay. So this is kind of nice. So again, this is like the basics of what you would kind of see. You would import requests. You would import, for me, I like Beautiful Soup. It's a really good standard. Would do this over and over again. So I basically call it the main page. What's the main page I actually care about? And the main page in this case is actually going to be this this transcripts page. So I'm actually going to go ahead and put that in here. And so this is the actual main page that I'll go off of. And then from there, I can go to each, individual like transcript page for each episode. Okay, so this is kind of like just to get a basis of like where I'm going to start off, right? Okay, and in this case too, this is going to be like my ultimate goal. But since I'm going to start with one episode, I'm just going to go ahead and say, we're going to say like test out one episode. I should change up my keyboard so it's easier. Okay, so let's say we're going off of this one particular part. So I'm going to kind of change this around. So I'm going to use the same, so I don't have to keep going through here. But in this case, we'll get rid of this part. And we're going to go ahead and comment this out. So this is something I'll come back to later. So I go to this main page. And right now, I'm actually going to use this specific web page right here on this right. So that way I can kind of play around with this. And then when I get ready for it, I can replace this main page in case this one I'm actually want to change it to, oops. I'm going to change it to transcript. So this is basically saying, okay, like I'm going to get this specific web page. I'm going to use the response, right, from request. Okay. And then with the soup, I'm going to go ahead and get that text and everything. Okay. So this should all work fine, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just run these parts. And this is me just kind of exploring a little bit. So, right? So you'll see here if I got the soup now, and that soup will just be for this page. And so, for example, if I go ahead and try to do soup.prettify, we can see a little bit getting the whole web page in here. And so honestly, I usually don't, when I go web scrape, I don't go directly onto here. I go to the website because I can see exactly what it should look like and then do an inspect, right? So what I really care about, I'm going to ignore these characters, locations, and extra metadata. This might be something interesting to come back to, but I'm going to focus on transcripts. I'm going to test out one episode. Transcript. That's what I really care about, at least for right now. Okay. So I'll go ahead and inspect this part. So what we'll probably find, as you kind of saw for some of these, oops, let's go ahead and close this guy. You can see kind of like for each episode, we have this transcript part. So if I can find where, oh, this is just a random page. If I find this transcript area right here, I can probably then say, okay, once I find the area where all this stuff happens, then I can go from there, okay? And so I'll go ahead and do an inspect element right here. And hopefully this will be a nice little heading and cool, H2 heading. And we can see here there's a span, there's a class, MW headline, and then ID transcript. So ID is actually really useful for me. And why would ID be really useful when I'm doing web scraping versus a class? They're both useful, but
because it's unique.
Yeah, it's unique. Yeah. So ID, right, is going to only be used in this specific circumstance. So I can say, oh, just find ID and go for it. So let me go ahead and just kind of play around with that, right? Just to kind of proof of concept. It's kind of just playing around. So this might be how you do it. So okay, let's do soup.find, and we're just going to do ID is equal to transcript, right? Okay, look right. So we got the find right there. And so we can see, okay, we got that whole span, class, ID, and everything like this. Like, okay, cool. Like we found that this is right here. So this obviously probably is not exactly what we want. We just want to know where this is located, right? And then we can go further. And you'll see here is that if I look at this closely, you can see there's the heading, but there's not like a subhead, like it's not an element within itself. It just basically says, oh, here's the whole like container. And then inside that container, basically there's all these elements, right? And then we hit our heading, And then underneath that heading, we see all these parts. So there's a couple ways I could do this. Like, okay, I could do like, for example, dot next sibling, right? Yeah, my keyboard's awful right now. Okay, oops. Oh, so that didn't quite work. So maybe I don't know how to do next sibling. So I'm gonna say, okay, like, because our next sibling should be like the next one down, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Barty, were you gonna say something?
You should have like a, need to go like a one step up.
So maybe one step up, so like going up to parent?
To the H2, because that's not the H2, right? The one you're targeting with the ID transcript.
Right, so it'd just be this guy, right? So like I could do, for example, like dot text, and that would give us what's inside the H2. That makes sense? So it's like, okay, like this is where like, honestly, you might come and say, like, you know, I don't remember how Sibling works with Beautiful Soup. Like I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this. So one thing you can do is like, you could try doing like, you know, question mark, but I like going straight to the source. So I'll just go ahead and just do Beautiful Soup. Oops. Let's say Beautiful Soup. What do we want? Next sibling. And to see what comes up. And you can see some Stack Overflow, but I like going straight to the documentation. But we could, if we know specifically like a very specific question, we can search this on here. And then if we find it, we can go through Stack Overflow. But this one is like, I don't really remember what next sibling does. So you can see I'm already finding it over here, going sideways, all this stuff. Like, okay, maybe this is what I need to find, right? If I couldn't find it right away, I could just simply just do like, you know, go next sibling, and I can see, okay, here it is. And you can see here, it's like, okay, they got a little tutorial here. They have Sibling Soup. I don't know what that is. Looks like this might be it right here. So if they make some soup prettify and everything like that. It's like, okay, cool. And I want to do soup, and it looks like they have a tag here. So it looks like they're probably searching for this tag right here, and then to next sibling, and then they're pulling up that C. So okay, that's kind of what I want. I'm like, that doesn't look like exactly right? I'm not seeing that to be exact. What I'm trying to find when I do dot next sibling. Maybe I spelled sibling wrong. And I don't get anything, right? So like
no, but what I mean is that I think you have to go like a one step up, because right now you're getting the span instead of the H2. So you have to go like a, because right now when you're doing that find ID transcript, you're getting the span inside the H2, right? Not the H2.
Okay, so okay, maybe I'm getting that H2 part, right? So we need to go up one level, like you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we call that next up level?
Parent, maybe.
Okay, parent, right? So let's try parent. Is that right? Okay, so we got something right here, right? So, okay, maybe that's what we were looking at, like you were saying, Bardo. So we go, okay, dot parent. And so then we should do dot next sibling then? Is that right?
So I think that should be the H2 instead of the span, what we're getting right now then. So next sibling should be, I guess, the first. Yeah.
H2 next sibling, right? Oh, just not next sibling. It's like, I still get an error on this, right? So something's not quite working out the way I expected. So this is where like, you're like, okay, like this is where you like get kind of stuck. You're like, oh shoot, like there's something not quite right. Like, it seems like you're right. Right, we're getting this part right here. And so maybe we're missing some information, because clearly this would work at this point. So let's just try to, literally what I try to do is I try to copy what this looks like. Say, okay, well, let's just try to do, and we're just gonna go delete this in case we change things up. So we'll just do, instead of this dot find, we'll go ahead and try to use our soup. We'll do our soup dot, let's just try to find the first B, right? This first B tag, which in this case would be bold. But we'll find this B tag, and then we'll do, let's see what we get. It's like, okay, we got previous, and we can see do dot next sibling. And it's like, okay, well that worked, right? So it's like, okay, so this thing should work fine. It's like, okay, maybe let's try to find like the first H2. So let's see what, maybe we just need to find the first H2. Well, that's fandom. That's not what we'd want, right? So it's like, okay, like, like how do I get the next sibling from my find? So maybe this is something I kind of check around a little bit. I can maybe look around, it's like, okay, like, oh, I want to find this specific part. And so this is where you might, for example, kind of go through, it's like, okay, hey, look at this. Like, this is kind of what we want right here. It's like, okay, we want to find a ID. Okay, so maybe what's happening here, I say, well, originally, I did this ID tag, right? And it found it, like we saw, and let's just get rid of this parent just to make it clear. It's like, I got this part, right? But what's happening here is that it's finding this .id tag. Maybe I need to actually specify what specifically I want, right? So maybe it's like, okay, let me go ahead and try, I don't know, span. Okay. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe this is starting to figure, it's like, okay, I'm getting the same result. And this is where you might go, okay, maybe this is something going on here. Like Barda was saying, like we're in the span, we need to find that parent. So this is where, for example, you say, okay, like, well, I need to go that one parent up. So maybe I do parent again like this. It's like, okay, I got this. Like
you have to call it like a function, or it should be without the brackets.
See, there I might have made a little mistake there. So you can see it's like, okay, now we got H2. It's like, okay, we got H2. Maybe now that was our mistake, right? And also note that I put this span here, and that makes it a little more explicit. I technically I didn't need to have that. But this is where like you might kind of play around with a bit and say, okay, like that's how you kind of find these parts. Okay, so I'm just keeping there because it's very specific, and I want to find the span that has the ID transcript, and then we'll go find the parent, right? So we'll just go and call this like, you know, H2 transcript, right? So that way we know what that is. And then let's go off of that. So maybe that's when we say, okay, well, we got H2 transcript, right? And we want to find the next sibling. So finally, it's like, okay, now we can go ahead and find the sibling. I'm like, huh, okay. Got a new tab, right? So it's like, well, let's go ahead and find the next sibling after that. Yeah, nothing interesting. It's like, oh, wait, maybe I need to do this twice. Finally we get something that we actually wanted, if you even remember that part. So we have this guy, we went to our next sibling. In this case, we get the DL, DD, you know, with all this stuff, and you can see, oh, this is kind of a pain to get it through, right? So maybe this might meant to be the best method. Maybe our idea of finding transcript first, maybe this could work fine, but I can see this starting to get kind of frustrating, especially if you want to get to the next sibling after that. Well, if I wanted to get to, you see this episode begins right here. That's what this sibling. The next one right here, if I do .next sibling, .next sibling, .next sibling, I think I should get this part. Let's just try that real quick. Oh, that's right, we get the little new line character, right? So if I do this part, now I should get that second part, which is this Jake, yeah, youth, all this quote right here, and you can see that's what's going on right here. So it's like, okay, I could do it this way. Like I could maybe go ahead and find it, right, with doing this. So just to kind of look forward, so I would say, okay, like let's start with like, I'll call it like last, I'll just call it last element for now. Okay, and so I'll say, okay, my last element is going to be this guy. Okay, and I might do something like okay, for we'll just do it for a few times. So for I in range of 10, just to do the first 10, right? And I'll say, okay, last element, right, is .next sibling, .next sibling, and we'll just go ahead and print. We'll save this as current line. Okay, so I'm just giving it some names so I can kind of reference it. So we'll go ahead and do this part. So we could see, like, hopefully, if I'm doing this right, I'd start off with this last element. We got the H2 transcript. We saw the .next sibling that skips over that new line character, hopefully, and then goes to the next part, which we should get, for example, Jake, and then we'd go repeat again, and then we should be able to go back and forth, right? Okay. Anything anyone want to add in? Okay. So I'll go ahead and try this out, right? So what am I expecting? What should I expect when I go ahead and run this? Probably looks something like this, right? Maybe. Okay, and this is the part where fun about coding is like, I don't know, like, let's go and try to run it, right? And we see, hey, it worked. Well, and not really, right? You can see here, it's not exactly what I wanted. And you're like, okay, something isn't quite what I expected, right? I was like, okay, in this case, I'm actually just getting the same thing over and over and over again. So what's happening here?
Maybe you need to like tell it to move to the next line, like add one.
To like add one like this?
I don't know.
That's okay. So like move to the next line, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Think, Bardo, were you going to say something?
So instead of the getting the next sibling of the last element, you should get the next sibling of the current line and then update the current line with the with that, right?
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. So you're saying, I think the big part is to realize, oh, I'm just calling last element over and over again. So I'm just gonna get the same thing over and over again, right? So what I want to do here, it's like, well, okay, I get the first one, right? I print it out, and then I say, okay, move to the next line. And this is kind of like what Hazel was saying. And then what we could do is say something like, all right, let's say last element, okay, is equal to the current line. Okay, and that would say, okay, that means the next time it runs back through, we'll start right here, and then we'll go down, you know, next sibling, you know, and go further. So we should hopefully then at this point see Lady Acorn, this script right here, right? Princess Bubblegum, she adds Finn and Princess Bubblegum, just always great names, right? So I can go ahead and run this now. And hey, look at that. And it looks like, if I see this right, it looks like I'm getting everything I'm expecting, right? Cool. And I stop at 10, so just know that it stopped at that 10 part. So this is like, okay, this is one way you can kind of traverse going through the web scraping. Now, you can perfectly go through this, and this is perfectly fine. This is probably not the best way to do it, only because there's a few issues. And what might be some of these issues that we might come across? Anyone got a guess?
You don't know how many elements you have?
Yeah, I don't know how many elements. I could do something, oh, if I don't know how many elements, what could I possibly use instead of a for loop?
While?
Yeah, I could do something like a while, right? Maybe I can figure out like some case, like, you know, after, you know, if I keep going down next element, and then at a certain point I stop, right? You can see here, if I go inspect, right? So I go like, you know, like going from here, and then all of a sudden I hit this part right here, which is a paragraph. So maybe I can do some things like, oh, while, you know, while this is going on, and then once, you know, the element is not a DL or it changes to something else, I can go ahead and stop it, right? So that might be something. There's a couple other things that you might run into, especially when it's like user input data. Anyone got to guess what I might be thinking about? So one thing that could happen is I saw that there's a new line. That's why we did next sibling. What if there's something else that's in there? What if there's like another new line in there or some other kind of like in-between part? And I basically get off by one. And let's say this is like, you know, I'm running this over and over and over again. I'm not going to sit here and baby it and see if it works, right? It's like, well, if I do that, it's like, well, okay, then it's not going to, what's it called? It's just going to skip over the wrong one, and I'm going to get the wrong information. I might get a bunch of new lines over and over again because there's an odd number, right? So this kind of, it's like this could technically work, but it might not be the best choice to go through. However, kind of looking at what we've seen, there's one thing that sticks out really like a whole lot, and hopefully it's sticking out to you right now. All the times you see part of the transcript, you see this DL, this DL tag. And then inside that DL tag, we have our DD tag, right? So maybe that's what I need to find. Maybe I need to find all the DL tags. In that case, I don't have to worry about how many there are. I just say find all the DL tags and go from there. So this is kind of an alternative. So I'll keep this here, and I'll say, you know, maybe not the best was like, okay, I'll go ahead and leave that alone. So I was like, all right, let me go ahead and try to do a different way. So one thing I could do is like, it's like, all right, well, what if I just go ahead and find in this page all the DL tags? Worth a shot, right? So how would I do that? If I wanted, first I start off with soup, right? And then how would I find all the DL tags? You gotta guess what I would do or what I type.
Find all.
Find all, hey. All right, so find all. All right, and I'm assuming you meant like the function, right? And then what should I put within that function, that method? What am I trying to find?
DL. Sorry.
No, it's all good. DL, right? So it's like, okay, I think that looks kind of right? I could be wrong, but you know, if I'm wrong, I just change it and rerun it, right? And I get also the little shift tab here. And you can see there's some extra stuff. It's like, well, let's just see if it works, right? Be adventurous. It's adventure time after all. Okay, so you say, okay, cool. So I can start seeing, it's like, hey, I'm actually getting results here. It's like, all right, this seems like this is what I want, right? You're like, okay, I get this first element here. Second element, it's a little hard to read, right? So maybe I should just say, okay, I'll call it like lines, right? I'll make it more specific, transcript lines, okay? And let's just try to see, instead of the whole thing at once, let's go ahead and just do that first one. Okay, and we can look, I forgot what the first one was. It's a description of the scene, and it says, come on, there we go. The episode begins in Candy Kingdom. Jake is playfully chasing Lady Craig. All right, cool, so this works, right? And let's try to just check out for the first one for completeness. Oops. Number one, and we can see it should say Jake, yeah. Let me see, Jake, yeah. Cool, right? Works out what we want. And why not a fun one to just do the very last one? So we don't even have to care how many there are. We can just do the very last one. And we can see here, Finn squeezes him, starchy farts. All right. Again, a kid's show. It's kind of that way. So you can see here, yeah, hey, it got everything we wanted, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. This is looking pretty, you know, pretty solid. Like this seems like a pretty quick way. And you can see this is a lot easier. I'm finding exactly what I want. I don't have to worry about going through the whole thing. Again, this could technically work, but this is kind of like an easier way. It's like find the specific tag. And this is just hopefully assuming if I have other DL tags, then I might have to worry about that. But this seems to be structured pretty well. So I'm going to assume like pretty safe. Okay. So we can go off of this guy. And now it's like, okay, let's just go off of that single line. So I'll just go do line is equal to transcript lines. And we'll actually use one that is useful, that first actual spoken line. So let's scroll up here. So again, this is, we see Jake. Come on, there we go. We see Jake and he goes, yeah. And then he has some extra stuff right here. And so I want to see that very first line. And we see this line. Let's just go our first line. So it's like, okay, this is nice, but it's not nice and pretty, right? So you can see here, and you can see it probably pretty well over here on the side, is that at first spoken line, it's DL, and then we got a DD, and then inside that DD we have the text that we probably want here, right? So how do I get, does anyone remember how I would get, I have basically that this whole element line, right? How would I get the, how do I get the DD part in here? There's a few ways we could do this. I'll give you a hint, it starts with a dot.
Can you do a find?
Dot find, sure, let's try it. So dot find, and then what should I put in there, Bardo?
DD.
I'm assuming you meant the string, right? Hey, that works. So we get the first find right here. I'm like, cool. I mean, it's not super pretty, right? In this case, I just want the stuff inside. So does anyone remember how to get the stuff inside a tag? Another dot by the change. How would I get this text?
Dot text.
Oh, let's try it. Hey, check that out. Okay, so we can get actually the text within there too, right? You see, hey, not bad, right? And what's nice is it's a nice big old string. Again, this is why Beautiful Soup is so useful. I don't have to worry about finding the end tags and everything like that. Okay, so good. perfect. So we actually got this text here. And I'll go ahead and just put like line string. Okay. Another way we could also do this. So does anyone know another way we could do the same exact stuff starting with line? So just to re-emphasize what line looks like. That's what line looks like. Does anyone have an idea how we would parse through this guy? Another way we could do it. It starts with a dot.
So going to the first child?
First one, so how would I do that? Oh, so you said first child, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so how would I go to the next child? Let's just try
children at 0, yeah.
Let's try children. Oh wait, because I guess should probably print it out, right, so I can see it. Ooh. So this is kind of fun. It's like list iterator. It's like, oh, what is this, right? You'll see this a lot. Basically, it's like a generalized list iterator. So basically, it's begging for me to call it a list. So like, okay, cool. Like I actually get that first part. Like I get this whole thing in here. It's not. I mean, it works out, right? I can probably do like list this part, get the first element, and then do a dot text, and that would be the same thing as we had before. Okay. One thing I think you could do as well is you can go ahead and just do child. Oh, maybe not. Okay. So one thing I was thinking about is like we could do is .dd. I actually don't know if this will work. Hey, okay. So since we know inside this tag right here, we know there's .dd, we can just do that and say, okay, .dd, .dd, and there's only one thing, and I can do a .text, and we get this whole string. And note that this is the same exact thing. Well, not the same exact thing, but it's basically the same thing that's happening right here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and keep this one because this one kind of makes it clear. This might actually be more efficient, but it's probably not a big deal. So we'll just go ahead and get rid of this guy. I'll put an alternative. Okay, so okay, cool. So we have one episode, one line of a transcript. Awesome, right? We're done. So no. Okay, so it's like, okay, this is not too bad though. We actually got the line in there, and at this point, it's like, okay, cool. We have these parts. So if we want to get every single line in this transcript, we just got to do a for loop within this, right? So this is kind of the fun thing, is that what you can do is we can go ahead and merge these guys. Let's do a edit, merge cell above, and you can see here, merge together. Super useful. I could have just copy and paste, but I just want to be fancy to show you guys. So we can see here, it's like, okay, we have our line string, but we want to find all the lines, right? So we want to find all the lines. We want to do, what could we do to make sure we iterate over all the lines instead of just this one? We want to do something over and over again, right?
For loop?
For loop. So what am I looping over?
Transcript lines.
Perfect. So I'll go ahead and call this line, for line in transcript lines, right? And then I'll go ahead and indent like this. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this since we've already seen this, right? And this should hopefully go through. And just to kind of show that it works, we'll just do a print, right? We go ahead and run this, and you can see, hey, look at that. We're getting, hopefully, what looks like the same thing. There we go. So Jake, Princess Bubblegum, check that out. Oh, it's beautiful, right? I can now, I could even export this all completely to a single string if I wanted to, right? So like, all right, cool. Now there's a couple of things in here where we can start doing some pre-processing. It's like, okay, we're getting each individual line, right? So if I wanted to, for example, I could just do something like, you know, this is redundant, but like just to kind of go show, I do like lines. So this is actually line strings. I can set this equal to like this, and then I can say, okay, instead of just printing it, let's go ahead and do lines.append line string, right? So the reason why I can do this, like this will make a list of lines, right? And I'll go ahead and run this guy, and there we go. Let's just check out lines, and you can see here, I have all the lines and they're all strings. I can do, say how many lines there are in this episode, right? You see, oh, 218 lines. for example, I can just go ahead and get the first one, you know, with 0. I could also just go ahead and get like, I don't know, the 40th one. And you can see there's the 40th line in there. So I can kind of like, you know, have this a little bit structured a little bit better. So this is one way you could do this lines part. You could also, again, I'd like to show you guys a little fanciness in here. I could also try to do this within a list comprehension. So just to kind of show you guys what that looks like, honestly, I would probably not do a list comprehension on here because it makes it a little more convoluted, and unless you feel comfortable with it, honestly, list comprehensions are like an extra flavor, right? But if I want to call it like lines equals this is my list comprehension. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to do it for line in transcript. It's lines right here. I say, okay, well, for every line and line transcripts, I want to do this guy, right? And there's my fancy dancy list comprehension. Okay, and essentially it's doing the same exact theory except for the printing. So it's just making this lines.append. It just makes it in one line. So if I see this now, I should be able to see the same exact thing. And you can hopefully see it's creating that same list of different lines. Okay, cool. There's also another thing we could do too, that this is kind of like one thing you can do. You can do a dot strip. And so you'll notice when I got this part, you'll see that this is actually got the little extra, you know, new line characters. I don't really want that, right? I don't need a new line. I just need to know what the line actually is. So I can do this part. And if I run this guy, and just to show you the lines now. Oops, I should. That's actual method. So now you can see like in the actual part, I'll get rid of this part. And so if I do lines, for example, like this, you can now see I got rid of that extra new line character. So this dot strip part will basically strip out extra space, extra new line characters, extra tabs and all that stuff, just to make it a little bit cleaner for us to like not deal with. And you can see here, each part should be nice and easy to read in this case. It's a little confusing with these brackets because that's part of the structure of them talking about the lines, but these are each their own simple strings. Okay, so cool. So right now we got all the lines in the episode. So not too bad, right? So I'm going to keep it like this. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this guy. So I'll just say list comprehension way. Just to kind of show, I normally would just get rid of this, but I'm just kind of keeping it so you can kind of go back to it later on. It's like, okay, cool. Like I got this part. Let's go ahead and actually make this a little more detailed. So I'm actually going to copy this cell. So I'm going to just do edit, copy cell. Also, just know if it's, this is edit mode and this is command mode. If I go click on this where it's blue and I press the letter C, I know you can't see that, but like I press the letter C and then I just go ahead and go to the bottom here and I press the letter V, it'll paste that cell there. So I press V, it'll actually paste that cell. So nice little quick way to copy and paste cells. And you can do that for multiple ones as well. Okay, but now I'm in here, I'm like, okay, cool, let's get rid of this stuff since I don't need it, right? So I have transcript lines, I'm finding all the transcript lines in there. I get a line, right? I'm just basically getting all these lines in here. I'm like, cool. I'm like, all right, let's just make this really simple, all the different lines, right? It's like, okay, like one thing we might want to do is maybe we want to say, well, who's talking about it, right? Or you might say, if it starts with this, what's it called? Like it starts with a square bracket, maybe this is like scene change, or let's say, I'm not a playwright or anything like this, so I don't know exactly what the term is, but I'm gonna say like, you know, like extra info or something like that. Again, this is where, you know, you decide what you want to do. So like, okay, like I might put in here like, okay, I saw this print line works, I'm gonna get rid of this guy, and I'm gonna want to get some extra information. So I'll say, okay, I'll say like, you know, test if it's extra info starts with like that, right? So that way it's like, okay, cool. And then I might say like, okay, this way, like I might say classify this as test if it's extra info. And I'm gonna say, okay, if it's this extra info guy, I'm gonna call it, you know, extra info. Okay. And I made this, I put these brackets here because I don't know, I just tried to be nice and clean, right? And so say, okay, that means we want to identify this somehow, tie some information, say this is extra info, okay? And then if not, assume a person, right? And we say we'll tag this as, instead of whatever it is, let's say that character's name. Right. So what I'm kind of envisioning is something to say, okay, when it's not just simply a single string line, I want to identify what each person said. It's like, okay, I want to tie this extra information together. And so this is something that would be really useful for something called like a tuple. So I know we kind of talked about tuples, but it's something I think we kind of tend to ignore. So remember, a tuple is just basically kind of like, you know, two different characters like this. This is a tuple, right? And just to kind of prove you guys that it is in fact a different thing, okay, you can see here, it is a tuple. And in fact, tuples don't have to be two. You can do multiple things. In fact, you can get an empty tuple, or at least a tuple of one. Okay, that's how you identify one kind of element. I think you can do I don't know if you can do an empty tuple. I don't know. I never use an empty tuple, so I have no clue if you can. But the point is that you can do this tuple. So what I'm thinking here is like, okay, it'll be something like, you know, person, or let's say like, yeah, we'll say like person or character. I'll call it character. No, I'm gonna call it person. Okay, so this is like, you know, person might be like, you know, extra info is the person. Oh, there we go. Who's the person who's talking, right? Or no, I was saying narrator, but maybe that actually might not make sense. Maybe there is narrators in certain case. I'll keep it person. So this person can also be extra info, right? Out here, not the narrator. So I'll call it person, and then I'll say the actual, the line string, right? I was like, okay, so that means like, that's what I really want to keep. I want to say, okay, I'll keep the lines. I'll call it something else. I'll call it like line, or lines with info. Okay. And so what I want to do is actually want to append this guy. So let's go and get rid of this guy for a second, and we'll call it, what's it, lines with extra info, or with info. And this is going to be dot append. I'm going to append this tuple, this person line string. Okay. So the idea here is that this is my tuple of information. Okay, where it's the, whoever said it, whether it's extra info or some character said it, and then what's the actual content of that thing that we see. Okay, so the key part here is I got to identify, how do I find this person, right? So let's go and test this out, right? So I have my line string already. How would I identify, for every line string I'm looking at, how would I identify if there is a square bracket at the beginning? What should I be typing?
Contains.
Contains. So spell it out for me a little bit.
Well, so line string dot contains, or
Okay.
and then square bracket.
Okay, so let's see if this works right here. Okay. So yeah, I think this is probably, Bardo, if you had another programming language, it's probably what you're thinking right now, right? So what we can do, in similar in Python language, is saying, hey, like, is the first character, right? This is the first character string is equal to this guy. So you can see, hopefully this will see, like, for example, the first one will be true, next one will be false. Oh, I don't have person yet, so let's just go ahead and get rid of, let's get rid of this guy so we don't keep running this. You see true, right? False, false, true, false, true. So you can see that kind of pattern right here. So this is identifying it pretty well. So cool. All right. So that means like we can actually test off with this guy. So we can say, okay, if this line right here contains this part, we can say, okay, this person, and we'll go ahead and call person equals extra info. That's what I'm calling my, I don't know, extra metadata, right? That's talking about the thing. So if it's not that, right, then it's a person, right? There's going to have some person name. And so from the person's name, right, if it doesn't start with this, we're hoping that it probably starts off with a name, a colon, and the rest of the information, right? So in this case, this person's going to be something else. But would we get this? How do we get, like, for example, in this string, this Jake?
Want whatever comes before the colon.
Okay, so good. We need to find that colon. We got to find everything before that colon. Good, perfect, right? And so key part, like this is actually good. It's like we need to find the colon. So what's the method we would use to find that colon and cut it in half and say, well, this is the person's name. This is the rest of it. It goes with bananas. Split. Okay, so this is where we can use a split right here, and we can say, okay, split along this guy. Okay, and we'll say, okay, that means let me go ahead and get rid of this guy. So the person will be basically this line split, again, the first part. So just to kind of remind you, in case you haven't seen this before or you don't remember it exactly, and that's perfectly fine, I'll go ahead and copy this like string right here. So let's say this is the string. We'll say A is equal to this. Oops. Okay, and we say A dot split colon. You can see here it gets basically Jake and yeah, right? Pretty nifty. So it's like, okay, cool. We can get this person, and then we'll split it off of here. Okay, so this will give me the person, and then it'll give me the full string and everything like that, and we're very, very happy. So I'll go ahead and keep this. Oops. Yeah. We'll make this nice and easy for us to read later. I love documenting my code because comments make me happy because I'll forget what I did before. So, okay, now we actually put this lines.person. Person should be defined by either person, or else it's going to find this lines.split, right? Line string. Okay, hopefully this works. No errors. All right, so good. So now we can actually check out. It's like, all right, let's see how we did. Let's actually print something out. We can see here, hey, okay, cool. So we see there's extra info, and then there's Jake, later rating corn, and then actually what she says. So let's just kind of look at something like number 3. It's like, okay, cool. We got extra info, and then this whole stuff. Awesome. Hopefully this next line actually has something right. Princess Bubblegum, and then Princess Bubblegum, all right. Well, this kind of works, but like it kind of makes sense. Like, why do we need this here if we're already saying it? So one thing we could do, right, is actually get the line string from here. So it's like, okay, well, let me just go ahead and say line string. Okay, and I'm actually going to go ahead and do the different splits. So yeah, I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and say split info is equal to this guy. So I don't have to split it once. I don't have to split it over and over again. Okay. And then that will give me a person, and then my line string, because that's the thing we're actually going to save, is going to be split info, but the next one after. Okay. So if I do this now, this should hopefully save it through. I run it, no errors, and you can see here we got Princess Bubblegum, and then actually what she has. You'll notice that there's some extra space here. I might do, for example, dot split, or not split, dot strip. So strip out some extra white space, and you can see here now, you'll see there's a little extra less white space because I'm pedantic like that. All right, so this is a nice little clear thing. I can actually see Princess Bubblegum, whatever she says. I can basically look at all the different parts. I can kind of go through this. Now, this is fine if you're just doing Python, but if we want to do some data and stuff like this, we actually would want to import this into and structure it like a data frame, maybe using NumPy. So for example, if I wanted to look at, like, this is the 4th one, but cool, but I want to see, you know, all the different cases that this comes up, right? So I might say, if I was a NumPy array, I'd say, okay, well, let me give you everything, but then only consider the first element in that everything. But you'll notice if I try this, this won't work since I have, this is just a list of tuples. So I could do something like np.array. I actually don't know if this will work properly, if it'll find this. Oh, cool. Oh, I love NumPy. Okay, so I know it's almost time, so I'm just gonna do this real quick. So basically I'm making this NumPy array, and we can see if I want to look at everyone who is talking, okay, and I'll just do the first one, and you can see here, I see everyone. Let me just do a print. Let's do a list so it's easier to read for us. And you can see here, extra info, lady rating corn, all that stuff. And if I want to see each individual line, actual text, I can use this part, and I can see each individual text. Okay. But now at this point, I can actually take this information, feed this into a data frame, right? And actually do something interesting. So again, I know it's come over time, but I'll just do this last part. I'm in the zone now. Yeah. So we can do a data frame and we can say, okay, this data right here, we can actually try passing this in. All right, let's just try. All right, this is always fun. Just try to see what happens. Hey, that pretty much worked. Okay, not bad, right? And you say, well, okay, this columns would be kind of nice. So for example, I might do something like, okay, columns equal, let's see here. Let's call it speaking, and let's call it spoken. These are bad names, by the way. That won't work very well. I didn't do that. So this should be columns. Okay, and you can see here, got all everyone is speaking, spoken, and now the beautiful, beautiful part, I can say df dot, let's do describe, right? And you see, you can see all the different parts. Top one's fin, whoa, not exactly what I want, right? So you can do something like, for example, dot value counts. Or not that. Come on. Am I thinking this right? No, this is for a specific part. I want df dot speaking value counts. And you can see how many lines are said by Finn, how many lines are said by extra info. Probably not really that relevant. And you say, hey, look, Princess Bubblegum, Jake, and then we can see Manfred, Guardian 1, Chet, and then Ice Cream Lady, Candy Person Lady, Peppermint Butler, okay, Zombie Love Heart. Again, if all of this has not convinced you to watch the show, you should watch the show. It's a really trippy one. But anyway, you can now get some extra information, and now we can actually start doing some stuff with this data, and we can actually start saving the data frame. Now you notice this is only one page, right? This is not all the stages, but you saw once we have this part right here, we can package this into a function and just repeat it over every page. And so you could basically go out one page to the main page, look for each URL, and basically drop into that URL, get the information from, like you can see up here when we did the request. Okay, basically this transcript URL, this would basically be changed to whatever we grab from the original page right here. Okay, and then we can just feed that in and just let it run over and over and over and get as much info as we want. Okay, so this is how we kind of would keep going through it. But you can see here, I'm already pretty happy with the fact that we have something right here. Cool. You guys have any questions or any kind of follow up or anything? Kind of went through a little bit. All right, awesome. So I'll go ahead and stop recording here. Maybe we'll continue this for next time, or I don't know, maybe we'll keep going.